For 17 straight days, unidentified objects flew over one of America's most important military installations, Langley Air Force Base, home to fighter squadrons tasked with defending the nation's capital. The intrusions were persistent enough that officers made a decision rarely seen in modern military history. They moved the jets. According to Christopher Mellon, a former senior official inside the Department of Defense who has testified before Congress on this exact subject, incidents like this are not rare at all. He estimates hundreds of similar incursions happen over American military bases every single year, and in most of them, nobody in uniform can say for certain what they were looking at. The Pentagon still has no explanation for Langley, but it is not staying silent either. Under a multi-agency transparency effort ordered by the Trump administration, the Department of War has already released nearly 300 previously unresolved files on what it officially calls unidentified anomalous phenomena, with more promised on a rolling basis. Polling shows almost 90% of both Republicans and Democrats want the government to release even more. In June of 2026, the newest batch of files landed, and it revealed just how strange some of those still unexplained cases really are. File 1. October 2023. 6 federal security agents on duty reported watching an orange orb, bright and unmistakable, hovering steady in the sky above them. Then it did something none of them expected. The orb released 2, sometimes 4, smaller red spheres that broke away and moved on their own, independent of whatever was carrying them. Some vanished within seconds. One of them stayed visible for hours. This is not eyewitness folklore passed around online. It is documented in a federal case file, reviewed by the Department of Defense's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, the agency Congress created specifically to investigate events exactly like this one. The report itself carries a date, June 5, 2026, signed by the office's own director, Dr. John Koslowski. Investigators floated a possible explanation: military flares, or an experimental American technology being tested in secret, something the country was never meant to see. But their own report admits the other option was never ruled out either. Unrecognized technology, not a hoax, not solved, just unrecognized. File 2. February 2022. Fort Carson, Colorado, sitting in the shadow of Cheyenne Mountain, one of the most secure military complexes in the country and, for decades, home to some of the nation's most sensitive early warning systems. 5 United States Army soldiers on duty watched an object they struggled to even describe. It looked, in their own words, like a potato, covered in overlapping panels that resembled fish scales, uneven, asymmetrical, catching the light in a way none of them could explain. For nearly 2 minutes, it held its position in the sky above the base. Then it vanished instantly. No warning, no trail. No one had a phone out. No one caught it on video. When investigators reviewed the case, they rated their own confidence in any explanation as low. Their best guess was sunlight bouncing off something in the atmosphere, a trick of the light over a base built to notice everything. In writing, in the government's own file, they admit they are not sure. File 3. July 2025, in the northeastern United States, in a quiet, sparsely populated area already known for similar sightings. A couple returning home at night noticed an intense light hovering roughly 25 feet off the ground. Witnesses described it as a brilliant red sphere, and at its center, what they called a white plasma sun. Then a second, identical sphere appeared beside the first. The two moved silently and smoothly, in formation, before what looked like merging into one. The witnesses caught part of it on video. The FBI interviewed them separately months later and, in its own paperwork, evaluated both as credible individuals. The file exists. The interviews exist, word for word, in the government's own record, released to the public in June of 2026. An explanation does not. File 4 goes back further and further from home. July 2008, near the main airport in Zimbabwe, witnesses reported a disc-shaped object, hollow at its center, with a series of rotating lights along its underside. People on the ground described beams extending downward from the craft toward the Earth. The report came from the Central Intelligence Agency, an agency whose interest in unexplained phenomena stretches back to the earliest days of the Cold War. This particular file had never been released to the public until this year, folded quietly into the same declassification effort that surfaced the orb over American soil and the potato-shaped craft in Colorado. 3 continents, 3 decades apart. The same 3 words attached to every one of them: unresolved, unexplained, unrecognized. None of these files claim to have found aliens. The government's own review board has said so directly. But that same review admits something else, something harder to dismiss. 40% of the cases they investigated remain completely unresolved. Not explained, not debunked, just open. Langley is still one of them. So is the orb. So is the object over Fort Carson, and the sphere in the northeast, and the disk over Zimbabwe. Almost 90% of Americans, on both sides of the political aisle, say they want to know more. The government has promised more files are coming, on a rolling basis, whenever that turns out to mean. Whatever flew over these bases, whoever built it, the people whose job it is to know are telling you, on the record, that they still don't. Tell me in the comments which file unsettles you the most.